Episode 13, A River in the Amazon, Flowing with Change. What happens when life takes you in a direction you never expected? When the current pulls you away from what's familiar, and suddenly you realise you're no longer in control? I used to believe that if I planned well enough, if I held on tightly enough, I could shape my path exactly as I wanted. But then I found myself on a wooden canoe, floating down a river deep in the Amazon rainforest, and I realised something. The river doesn't fight to stay the same. It moves forward, always. And maybe, just maybe, that's what we're meant to do too. This is the story of a journey deep into the jungle, a village untouched by time, and a lesson about the nature of change that I learned from the river itself. It started with an invitation. A friend of mine, Daniel, had been living in Brazil for a year, working on conservation projects in the Amazon. When he invited me to visit, I hesitated. I wasn't the jungle explorer type. I liked cities, structure, knowing what came next. The idea of travelling deep into the rainforest, where there were no roads, no schedules, no guarantees, that made me nervous. "You'll love it," Daniel had said over the phone, "but only if you're willing to let go a little." Let go? That wasn't exactly my strength. But something in me knew I needed this. So I packed my bag, flew to Manaus, and from there we travelled by boat for hours, deeper and deeper into the rainforest. The modern world disappeared behind us. Civilization thinned out until there was nothing but endless green stretching in every direction. We finally arrived at a small village along the riverbank. Wooden houses on stilts, hammocks swaying in the breeze, children running barefoot along the docks. The people here lived in rhythm with the river, fishing, washing, travelling by boat instead of by road. Life here wasn't planned. It just happened. And for someone like me, who had spent my whole life trying to control everything, that was both fascinating and terrifying. One afternoon, a local guide named Luis invited me to paddle downriver with him. "Follow the current," he said simply. "It will take us where we need to go." I hesitated. What if we get lost?" He laughed. "Oh, don't fight the river. You move with it. That is how you find your way." So I stepped into the canoe and we began to drift. At first, I tried to paddle, to steer, to direct us, but the current was strong, and every time I fought against it, I felt resistance. Luis noticed and shook his head. "Let the river take you," he said. "If you fight, you struggle. If you trust, you flow." I didn't quite understand what he meant. But then, as I let go of the paddle and allowed the current to carry us, something changed. The ride became smoother. The river knew where it was going. My job wasn't to control it, it was to move with it. For so much of my life, I had done the opposite. I had fought against change, against uncertainty, gripping tightly to the way I thought things should be. But maybe I had been making things harder for myself. As we floated, the sky darkened. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Luis looked up. "Storm is coming." I felt my muscles tense. Could we turn back? He shook his head. Keep going. The river will show us where to stop." This made no sense to me. Everything in me wanted to return to safety, to paddle against the current, to get back to something predictable. But something stopped me. A quiet voice in the back of my mind, "Trust the river." So we kept going, and just as the rain began to fall, the river curved sharply, revealing a small sheltered bank. Luis paddled us toward it, and we took cover just as the storm broke overhead. I sat there, breathless, watching the rain pound against the water. If we had turned back, we would have been caught in the middle of it. But by moving forward, by trusting the flow, we had found exactly what we needed. "You see," Luis said, watching me. "The river knows, we just have to listen." We waited until the storm passed, and then we paddled back to the village. But something inside me had shifted. I felt lighter, as if the river had washed away something I no longer needed. I thought about my life, about the things I had tried so hard to control, the paths I had forced myself to stay on, the changes I had resisted, the fear I had carried about the unknown, and I realized I had been fighting the current for so long. Maybe it was time to let go, to trust that life, like the river, knows where it is going, and that sometimes the best thing we can do is stop fighting and start flowing. Change is like a river. It's not something we can control, but we can choose how we move with it. We can resist or we can trust. In the next episode, we'll travel to the streets of Havana, where an old musician will remind us that joy can be found in the simplest things. Until then, I'll leave you with this. What are you fighting against right now? What would happen if you let go and trusted where the river was taking you?